GM, what's up? It's a new day. It's a new show. This is no longer the DeFi state. This is basic Degenomics with Hashflow. I'm Nicole Behnam. I'm here with my co-host, Alan Carroll, and we're here with Hashflow. What is good, Alan?
What's up, Nicole? Yeah, this is going to be fun. A little more of a casual tone, and the DeFi state will be back, and we have some more serious topics to discuss. So this is going to be awesome. There's always stuff going on in the crypto world. It absolutely never sleeps. And, we've got a few topics to definitely discuss today for sure.
100%. I'm so excited to do this. It's different than what we've done before. We'll still have, people coming on stage. We'll still have interviews, but they'll be a little different than the ones that we've done before. It won't be one-on-one. It'll be more of a conversation, less of an interview, which I'm excited about. I see Varun in the audience. What's up? I mean, he can't answer me, but that's fine. But let's dive right in. What do we have on the menu today?
Yeah, sure. I mean, first of all, there's some interesting stories that are coming out of Nebraska, out of all places. We've got some solar fields there, we've got some corn fields there, and we've actually got some crypto data centers. So I thought that was actually interesting to see that the crypto data center business in Nebraska is booming, as well as other cities in rural America and states in rural America. The reason, Nicole, is because the electricity costs are so low. So my question for you is: are we going to see a cryptocurrency hub that is right now might be a small little rural town with a couple thousand people, but in a couple years, maybe it will be Miami? You just honestly never know. What are your thoughts on that, Nicole? If we start seeing crypto infrastructure built in these rural towns, what do you see the development of these in just a short period of time?
Meaning, do I think people are going to move to Nebraska? Is that what you're asking
Yeah, they
me?
might move to Nebraska. That could be one.
They might. They might. Yeah, I definitely think that's a possibility. I don't think it'll happen right this second, but I think gradually over time we'll see that shift, and we'll see, I guess, enthusiasts move over, if that makes sense. I think it's possible.
Yeah, it's just definitely interesting to see that these rural towns that literally have nobody really living there are suddenly seeing massive investment from, pretty large organizations. And they're also already making good partnerships with the government there as well. Local and state governments are really being bullish on, these crypto innovators building in their town. So I think that's really interesting to see. And, it's good to see that it's also happening in America. We don't want a brain drain of crypto innovation leaving the United States, and out of all places, rural America could have another bounce here, which is exciting. Nicole, have you been to Nebraska before? Like, what are we missing there? Like, we have a lot of corn and we have a lot of agriculture there, but what are you thinking about rural America and the future of crypto innovation? Like, do you think it's actually feasible that these rural towns can support this kind of infrastructure, or do you think eventually the big cities in this country are going to be like, you know what? Rural America kind of got it figured out with this legislation, regulation, whatever you want to call it, to let them build. Is there any chance that their rural cities are going to be able to compete with these big cities?
At first, I think no. I think people want to stay where they're at. I think there's been a shift, especially with like a lot of innovators from the Bay Area to Miami. Very few to LA, and then a lot of people moved to Austin. I've seen that. So I think the big cities are winning. Um, but I definitely think, again, diehard crypto peeps will be moving to Nebraska. I just think there needs to be like a bigger shift, and then everyone else will follow.
Yeah, what do you think also about the argument around the environmental impact, right? Because this is kind of the main reason that these crypto data centers are even going there. And look, it uses like 100 megawatts. Like, I don't know if anybody understands electricity tech or terminology, but that's a significant amount of energy. The next company on the list in Nebraska uses like 10. So this organization is literally using like 10x the energy. Do you think that if we start seeing these kind of headlines about the amount of energy being used, that the environmental conversation will be stirred up again? Or do you think that this has kind of been put to rest here with some of the other comments that have already been made publicly by founders and organizations?
Oh, it'll absolutely be back, and we'll see a lot of that talk on Twitter Spaces too. Um, that's where I first saw how enraged people were, but it's not going to affect innovation. It's not going to affect the space moving forward, and we're definitely going to see another bull market, and it's not going to affect that either. So
Yeah, I mean, in theory, isn't it true that probably if we transitioned, I mean, again, this is outside of my wheelhouse, but you see the articles of like, oh, like Bitcoin uses the more energy than entire, countries. But if we do kind of move this infrastructure digitally, or digital, don't you think that we probably actually will be saving energy in the long run because of the inefficiencies that are currently existing, in the systems that make up this world?
yeah, what are the inefficiencies
I mean,
that we're currently
sorry, what was that?
what are the inefficiencies that we're currently seeing?
I mean, that's a great question. I'm not a financial scholar, but I mean, there just seems to be not even outside of the criminal element of organizations that pay a ton of fines and whatnot, right? It's like just the traditional systems seem to be a little bit archaic with the digital immersion that we're seeing just from the world. So, I don't know. It's definitely interesting to see. And we did also mention the traditional organizations being, a little more open to, crypto and innovation. And this kind of leads us to another segue. We saw Goldman Sachs actually rank Bitcoin as the best performing asset for the first quarter of or first month of 2023.
Oh, did
Yeah,
they?
so that's probably not an article we would have ever seen, up to very recently. So when you see a giant, an institutional giant like Goldman, write such positive press about Bitcoin, what are your thoughts, Nicole? What's going through your head?
I think obviously they're recognizing that it's an asset, and I think these bigger institutions are paying more and more attention to crypto as a whole. I mean, we're seeing it definitely in Web3. We see people moving uh, in this direction, trying to figure out ways to get into the NFT space and different spaces that involve crypto. Also, Varun, what is good?
I want to ask the question to
What
that.
is going on? I also see Aditya, so as the new speaker there, but no, I heard crypto, so I figured like I should jump in. So
Yeah, you should definitely jump in because we always want to hear.
I want to ask the question.
wait,
Yeah, I removed from speaker for some reason. I felt like that was troll behavior. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you got let's try and raise the hands for sure if you wanna participate. But we do want people participating on stage 100%. But
Yeah, we do. Just don't play music
yeah,
while our king Varun
yeah. I
speaks.
mean, normal
or
Twitter etiquette.
play music, but Lorna is gonna play music. I'll take music.
Yeah, but I'm the only one that can play
Okay,
music in this
fair enough,
space. Those are the
fair enough,
rules.
fair enough. I'll let you.
But Varun, though,
um,
I did want to get your perspective on this too. I mean, you've been in this space for quite a while. Like, what do you think about when you see such positive press from Goldman? When we've really seen a lot of negative press about crypto from traditional legacy media, or just giants in general. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, look, so I think the way I see it, right? So I think I've talked about this at length in the past. Uh, that or at least before crypto, if you think of like it comes down to money as a technology, right? So if you think of money as a technology, then before Bitcoin, uh, your big governments around the world or big financial institutions who had monopoly on finance also basically had monopoly on this technology of money, right? Which they got to enforce on every network user, right? So you can, in that sense, you can think of every nation as a network, like U.S. network, Chinese network, and so on. Or you can think of like blockchains as nation states, right? So that's an analogy I like to use generally. But before Bitcoin or before crypto, you generally had like these big institutions and governments around the world had monopoly on this technology, and they got to enforce its usage upon its users, right? So and by forcing them to essentially borrow money into existence and then pay uh, interest and fees for its usage. So in a way, you can say it was a highly optimized rent-seeking mechanism, right? So and when what crypto came about, or Bitcoin, it basically said you don't need money that needs to be controlled by any single entity. In fact, a technology can exist that cannot be manipulated by a single party for their own political gains, right? So in many ways, this was a threat to the existing establishment of the system, and it still is, right? So which is kind of the reason why you saw many of the initially it was like basically an underground movement, no one cared, while a bunch of people bought weed using Bitcoin in 2010, 11, and then a bunch of other people were like true believers who were into that. So no, actually, I know a friend who bought like weed with 30 Bitcoin back in like 2012, or 2011. So it was bad. So yeah, not me, not me. So, uh,
Thanks for clarifying,
yeah,
Varun.
no, I don't. No, I've never done weed.
Thanks for
Yes.
clarifying. But I did want to ask you a question while you're up here, because two people have asked me if you can go over DeFi a little bit and why it's important and why it matters. And maybe go over a little bit of what hash flow is, because there's definitely some new people in this space who aren't really part of our ecosystem. And I think it's important to talk about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Also, just want to close my thoughts on the establishment part, right? So when we saw basically at that time it was like not as popular, but then over time as more and more usage grew, I think the Silk Road happened in 2014 and such. But again, it started getting more attention, right? And over time, as you realized and recognized this as an actual threat to the establishment, you started seeing the negative press, right, around why Bitcoin is bad or why crypto is never going to survive and all these other things, right? And now over time, still because nothing happened, it still is like you said, the reason none of that press impacted this is the technology is because again, it's not controlled by anybody. And if enough people have the incentive design or the incentive to continue to use it, then no one can stop it, right? It's the force of reckoning. So which is kind of the reason why it kept growing no matter what. And it still is. And now I think people are recognizing that it's hard to fight it. So they're better off embracing it. Right. So we're not quite there yet. There's still, a fight being put up. But it's essentially a fight, war between the crypto nation or networks versus the traditional networks in the sense of who controls the incentive design mechanism, right? So the traditional incentive design being the dollar versus the new incentive design being Bitcoin, Ethereum, whichever incentive design you think is the one you want to consider, money, right? So that's sort of what you're seeing right now. So that's a saying where first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they you know fight you, and then finally they embrace you, kind of thing, right? So that's kind of what the cycle you're going through, and I think they're kind of where they fight you and we embrace, and then they embrace you. They're somewhere in between, I think, at the moment. But I think people may have different perspective on that. So glad to hear those things.
So Varun, it sounds like they capitulated. Is what it sounds like to me. I think they realized that the writing was on the wall, and that this kind of technology was not going anywhere, and that the innovation was increasing, if that makes sense. So you had a specific term for the force of reckoning. That's the first I've heard. That's pretty cool. So do you think that they just kind of saw the writing on the wall and were like, this is going to be the reality? We might as well try and position ourselves to take somewhat of an advantage.
Again, it's a speculation, right? I don't know for a fact, what Jamie Dimon had was talking about behind the scenes, but that is a likely scenario of what happened, right? So, or what is going to happen, even if it doesn't happen, if it hasn't happened already, right? So, which is also where you're seeing, like we've seen, like SEC taking actions against companies and so on. But again, they talk about the consumer protection and so or protecting consumer interests, and then there was some negative press around crypto. But now over time, again, the policymakers are investing time into figuring out uh, that the crypto is different than from the traditional assets in that sense, and they need to build new frameworks to actually, even if they were to regulate anything, they can't regulate that in the traditional sense. and they need to build better frameworks that are up to date with the modern technology, right? But the thing is, they're realizing that and they're working towards improving that, or at least I hope they are, right? So, which is where I think, uh, generally, again, I'm an optimist, right? So I think I generally like to think the future is going to be bright, and I think I like to see the positive side of what's going to happen. So, uh, I think despite all the negative press and comments, I do think over time it's going to be good for everybody else.
I think so too. Um, did that conclude your thoughts
My
on
my
all
my
that?
my my stream of consciousness, yes.
I love that. I love when you bring of consciousness onto this show. That's what we need here. Um, but yeah, I just wanted to quickly go back and again go over DeFi. I mean, we're on basic Degenomics. It would only make sense to make it simple for everybody, especially for new peeps. So it's all you, Varun.
Yeah. So the question to recurse back is I'm clear. You said like what is DeFi or why is DeFi interesting? Is that
DeFi, yeah, what is DeFi? What problem is it solving? And also maybe why hash flow
yeah.
at the end.
So uh generally the reason I'm bullish on DeFi is because again, when we talked about money or in the past before 2009, before Bitcoin, we said basically it was a technology that was uh basically controlled by a few big governments around the world. So it was a closed system, right? So you as a common user did not have access to, or had no visibility into what's going on behind the scenes, right? You were basically a consumer of this dollar as a product, right? And you had no idea how it was manufactured, what's the process behind the decision making, and so on. And you had no idea what was going on behind the scenes in terms of how it was being managed, right? And you could apply the same set of logic to finance as well and Wall Street and so on, right? So where much of the Wall Street and finance was accessible it was a closed system in the sense that you as a general public didn't have much insight into what was going on, and there was not much transparency into how these actions took place. Right, and the biggest example is the 2008 crisis, where most people had no idea that was coming. Right, and the corruption behind the scenes was pretty much unknown to anyone, right? So unless you were an insider, then you were aware of it. Then some people fought back, okay, but nothing really happened until things just crashed, and then the government bailouts happened, right? But the underlying point here is uh, it's a closed system and no one had access to anything, and as a result you didn't really know who was the part, you couldn't really hold anyone accountable, right? And what DeFi is doing is it's removing those barriers, right? Like it basically makes the system more open source and basically it gives everyone transparency into what is going on, which basically means you can actually hold your overlords accountable for things. So even if there's some centralized component to things, I think that's okay so long as you can hold people accountable, because the chain of command is kind of transparent and you can see exactly how the money is flowing and which party is responsible for what actions, right? Which actually brings a more sense of responsibility into people who are responsible for building these finance products and running them, right? Which is I think even more relevant example is FTX, obviously, right? Which was again a closed system and no one really knew what was going on behind the scenes until it just completely just imploded, right? And that's when all these things came about, and they were like, oh no, this is why maybe DeFi is interesting, right? Because everything is pretty much on the smart contracts, everyone can audit the trail, and as a result, it's really hard to be a bad actor without letting the world know that you are a bad actor, right? Which in itself could be very, may not incentivize many people to act in bad faith to begin with, right? So that's kind of what really makes DeFi interesting in the sense that it allows you to hold any party responsible, accountable for their actions, right? Because everything is transparent and auditable on chain, which I also think makes your regulator's job easier, because if the whole premise behind regulation is to protect consumer interest, then having something as DeFi and just open blockchains that can be used to audit every transaction, it makes their life easier to just monitor what's going on, right? So overall, I think it's a massive step up or 0 to 1 step function increase over what we previously had. Right, so that's kind of why DeFi is interesting. So if you can think of Bitcoin as technology that kind of revolutionized the idea of how we see money and made it money like decentralized. Now you can think of Ethereum and DeFi basically disrupting Wall Street in many ways, right? So that's again an analogy, not to say that one thing can be used the other way, right? But I think that's sort of how I see the system.
I think that's something you should tweet. You know, I always say that to you.
I know. One day I'll start writing threads.
Wait, say that
So
again.
one day I'll start writing threads. So,
You need to start writing threads. Are you kidding me? It's so crazy to me. I mean, I don't think this is your problem, but a lot of times, certain people will be like, threads are so cringe. And then I see so many threads doing so well. And I'm like, you know what? Threads are the move. I don't care what anyone says. I'm going to start writing threads. Varun, you're going to start writing threads. Alan, I don't know if you're already writing threads, but threads are the move in 2023. Let's go. Okay.
fair enough.
Waleed, welcome to the stage.
Thank you.
I'm so happy you're not a troll. How are you? What's up? What's on your mind?
A lot of things. HFT hash flow. It's on my mind all day.
What's going on, sir?
Same.
GM.
So you're
So
thinking,
yeah, go ahead.
go on. It's all you.
Yeah, just my question. I have a question for Alan actually. So I want to know his role in hash flow. Is he like the meme guy of hash flow? Is he an engineer? Like, this is my question.
I mean, I am no engineer, man. I have a lot of respect for the engineering team because they speak a completely different language. You know, my like fun title is Chief Degen, but I'm like doing a lot of social media work for them, and doing just a lot of bringing my perspective from my time at VaynerMedia and experience growing audiences and building communities, and just kind of exploring the DeFi world with Hashflow, and it's been a blast, man. I'm learning a lot. The team is incredible as well, and they're teaching me a lot and helping me get up to speed with this world that changes every single day, which we alluded to at the beginning of the space. But yeah, man, social media strategy, content creation, Twitter, Discord, you name it. I'm going to be helping out in a lot of different places.
Awesome. So I have another question, if you don't mind, Nicole.
What's good?
So my question is for the co-founder, or Varun, if I'm correcting his name right.
Varun is correct.
Right. Okay, so Varun, what is your plan for 2023 for Hashflow to take it to the next level of DeFi?
Hello, I was going to say, we are about to publish our roadmap today. So, right after this afternoon. But since you asked, and since we are, let's talk about that a little bit. I'll give you some alpha. So, I think, to recurse back, I think what Nicole mentioned, to just give a quick sum of what Hashflow is doing. It's a decentralized exchange protocol, right? So the way it works is the whole point why it's a decentralized exchange. I think we talked about why DeFi is interesting. So the idea is people can directly trade from the wallets. They don't need to deposit funds into an exchange. So basically, there is no counterparty risk that you would typically see by using a centralized venue, right? So that was the fundamental motivation that led to its creation, right? And then obviously we innovated a bunch on the design where we said like, well, let's use market makers for price discovery. Let's use off-chain pricing to basically guarantee that users get quotes that traders are not taken advantage of by MAB bots or front-running attacks. And then we can build more primitives like cross-chain swaps or add like derivative products and so on over time, right? So that was basically the thought process behind what went into Hashflow, in the sense that if other products have solved the idea of 0 to 1 to get people excited about DeFi, how do we build the next set of primitives to build a more capital efficient market structure that can take DeFi from 1 to N, right? So that's kind of where Hashflow sits. So in simple terms, how do we build the best trading experience possible for anyone, right? So that's really what we're moving towards. So in terms of taking it to next level, I think there's a bunch of things coming out in the roadmap, right? So this quarter, we've talked about hash first at length. Well, we've been talking about this for quite some time. We did the pre-staking launch to pre-activate people's profiles, and there's already been like nearly 6 to 7 million in HFT locked in there for people who are wanting to participate in the hash race. So this quarter we're going to be getting the hash race out, so it'll be the full experience so people can start competing for quests and adding, contributing to the community and just growing the culture, right? So that's something that's going to go live this quarter. And then we've also been, heads down improving a bunch of our backend processes to basically make the market, anyone who wants to provide liquidity, their experience much better. Same thing with anyone who wants to take liquidity. We're just improving our documentation and APIs to make that process a lot more seamless, right? And then Q2 of this year, I won't tell you which chain, but a major non-EVM chain is gonna become part of the Hashflow ecosystem, right? And will allow for interoperability between EVM and non-EVM chains. So that will mean basically you don't have to go to a centralized exchange or something to do a swap, right? You can basically use your Ethereum to buy this asset on another chain that is completely non-EVM. So that's going to be coming up in Q2. And then we'll also be adding like more interesting trading features like TWAP and VWAP and limit orders and such to improve the trading experience for people who want to do like large trades and so on, right? So those are going to be our Q1, Q2 roadmap. And then the second half of the year is where we are currently doing heavy research into building a limit order book. And I think that's really where it's going to be the game changer, right? Because the idea is, how do you build something that delivers Binance like user experience in terms of speed and cost and efficiency in price discovery, but also enable that without the counterparty risk that comes with using a centralized venue, right? So that's like the holy grail of any kind of trading experience, right? Where you build something that gives you that experience where you can trade without any barriers, without any limitations, but also don't have to worry about counterparty risk. And I think that's something that's going to be the second half of the year, right? So that's going to be what 2023 is going to look like. And all this while we work towards improving and making the trading experience really, really idiot proof so your grandma can use it and have no questions about it, right? So that, go on.
My grandma isn't alive.
Well,
So
we'll go find her in the afterlife.
I'm so sorry. I had to make it uncomfortable real quick. Go on.
No, I think that was all I had. But and 2024 we'll focus on building this for people in the afterlife as well. So that's how you take it to the next level.
This is why I joined this team. You guys think ahead. You're very creative. You think about people that aren't on Earth, and I appreciate that about you.
Exactly.
All right, that's all I have. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Varun, for the time. Thank you all.
Of course.
Thank you, Walid. Thanks for coming up. All right, Alan, what do we have next? Oh, we have Wise.
I like the username.
I like the username too. I feel like we're about to have someone up who's going to say some really wise things.
Man, the pressure.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Good.
How are you doing?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to check. Okay, so before I start going into anything, I just want to know what the rules are for this space.
I think the rules are basically just be respectful. Ask a question that'll be helpful, where the answer will be helpful to you, and that's pretty much it.
Oh, okay. So, are we allowed to talk about what we're building here? Because I was listening to the previous guy, and I think he was talking about building decentralized protocols where you could trade seamlessly.
Yeah. I think I'm the previous guy. Yes, you're right. That's
okay. So we're doing something very well. We have done something very similar. So basically, we've been in the space building for 3 years. January 2020 was the day that our token got officially listed on Uniswap version 2. Currently, 2 years later, we're the biggest liquidity. We have a market cap that's 5x smaller than our liquidity. Our liquidity is like, I think right now it's like $120 million plus. And we are a fully decentralized protocol. Like no one, when we do our token auctions, we have something built into our contract called a liquidity transformer. And basically what this does is it, like, no human ever takes custody of your funds. On the 50th day of the auction, the liquidity transformer basically sends the liquidity to the DEX and burns the keys forever. So fast forward 2 years later, that was the base layer of our ecosystem. So now we're in phase 2 of getting our ecosystem completely launched. So on February 25th, we're going to launch the Wiser token, which is going to use the same 50-day auction. Every day, 1.8% of the tokens will be available. And so that would be like 18 million. So like let's say 10 ETH came in on the first day. It would be 18 million divided by those 10 ETH. That's how many tokens you would get, so on and so forth. We don't use VCs. We don't have angel investors. Like no one on our team gets tokens for free. So there's no team tokens. Even the founder, like for our first project, he had to sell his house to buy the tokens in the 50-day auction. And basically right now, the second layer of our ecosystem is liquidnfts.com. It's going to be where you can get up to 70% the value of your blue chip NFTs instantly. Also, we're launching a competitor to Aave. And
Is there a question here? Because this sounds like a shill.
No, that's why I wait, hold on. Before you say a shill, like that's why I asked before I came on. So if I like overstep boundaries, I'm sorry.
So Wise, I think Jen, if you have questions around or any insights, I think that's usually good. But yeah, it's essentially like to avoid conversations around token price or token sales and things like that.
We don't even go into okay,
I understand, but see, that's why I asked first, because I didn't want to.
No, for sure.
I didn't want to go ahead if it wasn't okay. So I apologize.
Wise, you seem like a DeFi maxi though, which is definitely good. So maybe just tell us why. Because there's not many people even today that are even aware of what DeFi is, and you guys are already apparently doing a ton. So can you just tell us why you, out of all people, like just were interested in DeFi and just like a quick little a bit of alpha to what made you choose this path, like just your personal journey, not the company.
Okay, cool. Well, the reason I chose DeFi was because like my life before cryptocurrency, before I found out about cryptocurrency, I used to do something that was like not legal. And that was my career before DeFi. And I really, really like wanted to get out of it because like a lot of bad things were like starting to happen to me. Like one day can you guys hear me?
Don't incriminate yourself either, my guy. Like, just
no, I'm not. Because this is like the past. This is all the past.
So maybe, yeah. I don't know if you should do that.
Trying to save you, bro. Like, don't be admitted to crime. This is recorded spaces. You just never know who's out there. But look, we love the DeFi maxis. We're glad that you guys are out there. Definitely, we should have clarified the no shilling rule. Thank you for providing an example, though. So next time we can add the no shilling rule. So this is just a great little learning experience. But I guess I actually had a follow-up to Varun's statement earlier. We wanted to get the community involved. But Varun, you were talking about, just like your optimism and then the level of inevitability that, you saw with this kind of technology. But what do you actually think the true level of separation will be of money and state? Like, do you actually see a world where money is completely no longer in control of the state, or do you see that this digital currency, fiat dollar, is actually going to be used by the masses? Like, what are your thoughts on that, on the level of separation?
Yeah, so digital currency is an interesting term because money has been digital since 1950s, right? So you had the cash, and then since we went, the internet came about. Like most of the, I mean, when was the last time you bought things using a paper currency, right? At least not in the US, right? And if you go to China and so on, things have been digital for quite some time. So I think the way I like to see it is previously the money was again, uh, uh, the design of money was such that only certain parties got to control the supply and demand of these currency units in order to achieve policy goals, right? And now you basically have money that cannot be controlled or manipulated by anybody, right? So that's the fundamental difference, right? So, but they both exist in digital form anyway. Now, I think my general view of what's going to happen, likely will play how things will play out, is I don't think it's going to be a black or white. Fiat is completely gone, crypto will prevail, or crypto is dead, fiat will continue to dominate, and so on. It'll be some happy medium where both parties are equally happy and unhappy. Where there will be middle ground, right? So where uh, I don't think anyone will be forced to use X, Y, or Z, right? So there will be a choice where people will be able to pick the incentive design, and we'll always have to build frameworks around such a system, right? And which will develop over time. But I think my general view is that everything is gonna exist. It's just that the usage or the market share of one commodity would be far more than the other. It's kind of like, for example, you have your doctors who are funded by the government, and then you have your private doctors or hospitals, right? So that's similarly, you can have like money issued by a government, but you can also have cryptocurrencies that are not controlled by a single entity, and it comes down to the market share of which one is used as the incentive design preference by most people, right? It may not be that quick in the US because there's already a good chunk of it already, but then in countries where their native currency is not very stable and they're dependent on foreign currencies, I feel like crypto is like the way to go, right? At least many countries are recognizing that already. So I think that's my feel how it's going to evolve.
And what incentives, like, like like you mentioned the third world and developing nations, like I can understand the incentives of why they would use a digital currency, but what would the incentives in America be? Once we do have like a full cryptocurrency DeFi state, what is going on here? Like why somebody would be incentivized to use a digital currency issued by the government versus just a more decentralized like outlook. Like it's like, do you think that there's still going to be fear from consumers? That they just are going to want some kind of third party safeguarding those assets, or what incentives is the government going to be able to provide to convince people after all these years where they haven't done a great job of managing the money that this digital time is going to be different?
Well, that's the thing, though. Again, your government does not need to tell you to use cryptocurrency, right? In fact, no one needs to tell you to use it. Like it's your choice. You have the freedom to choose what you want to use. That's the beauty of crypto, right? In that sense, if 80% of the US, majority of the US consumers want to use Bitcoin as an incentive design choice, then well, uh, your government has to adapt, right? So that's the if it's democratic in any way, then basically the idea is you listen to the people and what they want to do. It's kind of like when you're building a product, you take feedback from your users and then use that to improve the product as opposed to telling them what they should be doing. And that's like a recipe to lose your users, right? And you can apply the same analogy at nation states level as well, right? So where you basically if most of your users are already exhibiting a certain behavior and that's the trend, then the person running the system, or at least is responsible for managing things, will have to adopt based on that behavior, right? That's the optimistic case. The pessimistic case is that be like, oh no, never mind. This puts threat. This is a threat to our existing system. So let's just use military, shut down the internet, go after every citizen, and seize computers and everything else, and turn this into a complete dictatorial state, right? So which is the worst case scenario, right? So now, depending on who you are, you can actually pick between the two, or maybe there's some middle ground between. But generally, I think that's kind of how you know it could play out.
Wow, definitely a big side of a lot of options that could happen. We're an optimistic crew here, so we'll lean toward the the more optimistic route here. Waleed, what's up, man?
Yeah, I mean, I had something in my mind. Like, I had this question for a long time ago, and I forgot to answer it. Forgot to ask it in the first place. So, I mean, Hashflow is a great product. The design, the team, the communication with the community, it's all, I mean, 100%. And I know the price action of the token is not reflecting the fundamental of the project. Okay, so but I found this one thing like it's kind of like annoying me. Like if you trade on hash flow, I mean you are giving like a free tokens for trading. I mean like it doesn't. I mean like why won't we like tax people on the trading? I mean if we can like put 0.001 tax, I mean like that we can create revenue for hash flow. I mean maybe the devs have something on their mind. I don't know.
Walid, can you expand on the question? You said, why is there more emissions of tokens? Is that the question you're asking?
Yes, the emission of tokens, like if I trade on hash flow like for ETH to
Mm-hmm.
USDC and I get trading rewards, all right?
Mm-hmm.
It's nice and it's good, but on the longer term, I mean, it's kind of like hurting the token for the emissions. Instead, like why won't we tax people that like we can create revenue for hash flow? I mean,
So, I think we are already discussing various models in terms of just protocol generated revenue and so on, right? So that's already, I think, and in the governance channel, there's already been talks and there have been few proposals. So that's something we've been, actively looking into. Right? So that's not been ignored already. So we've already seen that feedback. So that's something we are looking into. As for the rewards, I think again, this is where the token holders can propose to say like we don't want any more trading rewards, and I think and if there's enough consensus among the token holders to not have that, we can remove it, right? So again, which is where this is not a top-down approach where we're going to force you to keep taking, rewarding people with tokens, especially if all the token holders believe that this is actually bad and they don't want to give more tokens out as trading rewards. Just let's put something to vote, and we can go from there.
awesome. I mean, this is my point of view. Probably you guys have a lot of people maybe have a lot of point of views. Maybe
But
I
I
mean,
would say
yeah,
though that you can't at the end of the day, there will be emissions. So even if you can remove emissions now, at some point there will be more tokens in circulation, right? So that will, you can't be because you can't just manipulate the circulating supply by reducing the supply or uh and using that to get like a token price action, because at some point the tokens will be in the system, right? And you want that over time, because that's kind of way how you have a good price discovery. But that being said, I agree in the sense that how this emission is done is something that can be improved, and if there is feedback or interesting proposals coming from your guys' side, I think we can put them to vote. That's not an issue.
thank you, Valon. Thank you.
Yeah, also, I know we want to be talking a little bit about our special announcement, roadmap in a second, but we do have somebody else on stage that I wanted to give the opportunity to speak first. DeFi, Diogens, what's up, fam? You have anything that you'd like to say?
Yes, hello. I'm DeFi Diogenes. It's kind of past, but when you were talking about like what was the purpose of DeFi or the use case in America or even in the Western world, the more developed, like you already have your high finance systems. It's not the same as at least us old crypto cypherpunks like 10 years ago. We were talking about all the unbanked in Africa, and like we would talk about like everybody that didn't have access to the financial infrastructure that other that more developed countries had. Uh, Very much the use case for DeFi and stablecoins and blockchain based products is very similar to Visa or MasterCard or Amex or Discover, because once you're quote unquote in the network, it's the same as getting you have a card and they give you your 2-3% off discount that you only get for using that card. But you can pay the card off on time and there's not even an extra fee. And that efficiency is built into the market. And it's a very esoteric back end uh, financial monetary thing, but that efficiency can be automated with computers and done better, and retain more value than the current system, and it's one of the reasons that they had to capitulate and just accept that this was inevitable because the efficiencies are too great for a free market to reject them.
Hell yeah, fam.
And
What
that's
do you think about the time frame on that? What you just said? How long till that becomes everyday use case, like like the internet is today? What are your thoughts on that?
that's a lot harder because like the iPhone. It's the iPhone I think is roughly as old as Bitcoin, but obviously one is used far more than the other, even amongst like the most you know ardent crypto supporters will acknowledge that one is objectively more popular and well used than the other. So there are quantifiable numbers, but my point is that they've had the same time to exist in the market as an idea. And at the start, both of them and the concept itself were ignored by Steve Ballmer of Microsoft. He did not focus on mobile phones. He thought that there wasn't like nobody would want a tiny computer in their pocket. And so I do want to focus on the fact that technology shifts so fast that it is very hard to time these things on the macro scale, but it's much more believable at this point. Like there's no more of the actual like fear that Bitcoin or Ethereum will be declared illegal and mass people are going to jail just for holding, which was actually real, about like 10 years ago. I think that we have the use case, the double-edged sword of the FTX contagion is that we probably really will get regulatory clearance for the good actors in crypto, so we can have those guidelines and we can work with them. And I really do think that probably those like legal guidelines will happen in between now and like 3 years. We'll probably have that, and then with that certainty, there'll be more retail security as you have the builders that build out the products. Because the thing is, crypto is frequently much more of a back end monetary thing. Like I know that a lot of people talk about like using Bitcoin to pay for this and that, and I support that too actually. But it would be the same as like trying to pay with gold coins, and at some point you do realize that passing around the gold and the risk of somebody stealing your gold is baked into the market. Like everybody
Oh,
makes
yeah.
exceptions.
That's a good take, though. I
It's
do.
all.
I do also because I want to be conscious of Varun's time because he's also a very busy man. I want to ask him the same
Oh yeah,
question.
I'm sorry.
No, no, don't
I'm gonna
apologize,
go.
man. You had a good take. I want to ask Varun the same question before we forget. What do you think
All
about
right.
DeFi's question there or statement, Varun, about when do we expect like mass adoption, like people to be like using like crypto technology like iPhones? So it's like what do you think of the time frame? Like he kind of thinks around like the 3 year ish, or maybe not like full mass adoption, but more clarity. What do you think like the time frame is for everyday people to have a crypto wallet? Like, what are your guesses on that?
Well, I mean, look, it's hard to predict the timeline, right? So on the mass adoption. But the good thing is, like every cycle we see, we are seeing a new influx of users coming into crypto, right? Which is a positive sign. So in terms of when the mass adoption is going to happen, I think we need to address a few things before we even answer, get to that question, which is like, is the infra ready to support that kind of adoption, right? Because if you look at like many of the decentralized applications even today, they feel very, like hacky in the sense, for lack of a better word, because you have to still only people who understand many of these DeFi concepts are able to use them, as opposed to any average user who has never heard about crypto. For them to go and buy their first cryptocurrencies, I don't think any of the DeFi apps do a very good job of doing that. And not to mention the wallet security is another one. I think Kevin Rose, he had an issue a couple of days ago where he lost a bunch of money, right? And again, this is again not his fault, right? At the end of the day, this is something where the DeFi community in general, we need to work towards building a better UX that removes these kind of issues, because you will never have an issue where you accidentally or, swipe your credit card somewhere, then all of a sudden your entire bank account is drained. Like, that will never happen in fiat, right? So how do you get to build tools that prevent these sort of things from happening, where you accidentally authorize a transaction and that results in basically the bad actor getting hold of pretty much everything in your account, right? So that's just one example, but generally the broader point being, we have a long way to go in terms of building the infrastructure that is a safer for anyone to just interact with it without, and b, abstracting away all the complexity that is usually confusing to people, and only focusing on things that are simple to the consumer, right? Until we hit those things and really nail them down, it's hard to say that we're going to have a massive mass adoption, right? But if we crack those things, which I'm pretty optimistic about, that we will be able to in the next coming 2 to 3 years time frame, then I think we can actually strive towards what DeFi Dio is saying, towards like actually having everyone being able to use crypto and so on, or at least that door would be open, right? So right now, I think we still need to do a bunch of work in terms of building the core infrastructure and just improving the product UX to the point where this isn't an issue, right? So that's generally my view here.
Absolutely. That was a great take, man. And I know that the space is kind of wrapping up, so we do want to be talking a little bit about the roadmap.
I think we already talked about the roadmap.
Well, yeah, but we want to end it just reminding people that this is going to come out. We're going to be dropping a post today about, if you guys want to read more about it, definitely check that out. That will be going out soon. And Varun, if there was anything that you wanted to add on that, great. And if not, then we can probably wrap this up. And we appreciate your time.
No, I think we covered a lot of things today, so I'll probably say like this is a good time to conclude. But yeah, I think I'll let you guys go take it from here.
Awesome. Well, look, Varun, appreciate your time. Appreciate everybody listening. Keep an eye out for that roadmap post going out later today. And Nicole, any final words?
I like to end the space with words. I like to end with music, so I'm going to do that, and we will see you next week.